So Resident Evil 4's here. We've beat it. I mean, I'd imagine majority of yous beat it. If yous haven't, yous have played it. Yous are enjoying it. And seeing as though we have remakes of nearly all the Resident Evils at this point, okay, that's a joke. That's a blown out of proportion joke. We can clearly tell that they're going to remake more. It's just a fact. It's going to happen. It's a matter of which one they do next. Now, I could talk about the other ones. I really could. But I want to make an argument for the first game. I see a lot of people be like, you should not remake that game because it was already remade. It's already perfect. It's the best survival horror game. It's the best Resident Evil. It did everything perfect. The first game added stuff to it, made it look better, and it's just the better experience. You don't even need the first game anymore. Remake is the greatest. You get what I'm saying? Now listen, I could tell you some negatives with Remake. I really could. I'm not going to do that right now because it'll piss some people off. I'm not going to do it, right? But the point is, Resident Evil Remake, the original, is superb. It is a really good survival horror fixed camera angle experience. But that's what it is. It's a fixed camera angle experience. It doesn't work now. There's a reason you don't see that gameplay anymore. And I'll tell you why. Right? There are games out there that try to do it, but they're not popular. Nobody gives a shit about them. And there's a reason for it, right? Resident Evil was fixed camera angle due to technical difficulties with the hardware. Once Resident Evil 4 happened, there's a reason we've never seen it done again, right? Resident Evil 4 has just kind of gone, this is how it should look. Please do that going forward. Even I would take first person over fixed camera angles, and the reason being is because I like to look at my environment. I like to explore it. You can't explore it when you fix camera angles. Now, don't get me wrong, fixed camera angles do create some of the best suspense in video games. It really does, but it also creates repetition and boredom when you replay those games. They're like stress relief games. I used to speed run Resident Evil 1, 1996, 2, and 3, the originals. The reason I used to do that is because I knew exactly where to go, what to do, where to shoot. I knew where the enemies were, and it was just monotonous, and I could do it without taking any damage. And I used to think that was a good thing. I was like, I've learnt the game. I get rewarded by nothing ever touches me. And as I got older, I just thought that shit's trash. Now listen, I know some of you are going to have a preference for the fixed camera angles, and that's cool. That's great. Your remake of Resident Evil 1 will always be there. If I want to play Resident Evil 96, it'll always be there. It will, if Capcom would fucking re-release it. As somebody who loves the new style of Resident Evil, I still want 96 and 2 and 3 put on modern hardware. Why do I have to like whack out a tube TV and an old PlayStation N64, GameCube and all this other dog shit just to play those games? Why? Capcom, why? Like, we get it, you don't give a shit about those games anymore, but let's get it fixed. Let's stop doing that. But those games will always be there if you've got them, especially if you love the original remake. It's right there at your fingertips. Remake it again in the RE engine, RE2 remake style, right? Hear me out. Do not do it like this. For the love of God. I do not want to be going into that mansion and drop kicking zombies and backflipping and shit. Do not do that to Resident Evil 1. I love action horror games. Honestly, I really fucking do. I think it's the best. But don't do that to Resident Evil 1. Do not do that at all. You need to keep it the way 2 was. 2 was like, you've got to pick up this item, go here, do this puzzle, pick up this key to open this door, to get this new upgrade, to get this, to do that, get the bolt cutter. It needs to be like that, man. You need to be running around the mansion as Jill or Chris, and just, it needs to be like that. Now, I've heard people say you should join 0 and 1 together, and I'm all for that if you want to do that. But if it was just remake one of them and you just focus on one, You've got to respect 1 for what it is. You've respected 4 for what it is, but you've got to respect 1 for what it is, and it's got to be done like Resident Evil 2 Remake. It has to be done that way. It has to be slow-paced. It has to be atmospheric. It needs to be... You're picking your shots. It doesn't need to be... Shit, I shot this zombie in the head and I'm going to run up and fucking volley it. I'm going to teep kick it. I'm going to pull out my knife and slice it. No. 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 It cannot be that. It just can't. But there's definitely a reason to remake that game. And plus, it leads on to where we're going anyway. If you've beat Resident Evil 4, you know by the end of the game, spoiler alert, even though it makes no sense to call it spoiler, because you knew he was in the original anyway, Wesker's right at the end. We've introduced RE Engine Wesker. You've got to go back. Because some people haven't played that original remake. Some people haven't played the original games. They don't even know where Wesker comes from to begin with. So they're like, who's this fuck? Who's this nerd at the end? Who gives a shit? Like, what's his deal? You need to go back to the very beginning, and it needs to be Resident Evil 1, and you've got to remake it. Then straight after that, you've got to go into Code Veronica. Then straight after that, that's when you do 5, and 5 can be this again. Hell, I could see the argument for action horror to be forced into Code Veronica as some weird experiment. I don't want it to be, but I could see you doing it because Resident Evil Code Veronica does have cutscenes that are over the top. It doesn't have gameplay that's over the top. The gameplay is still exactly like the older titles. But the cutscenes did go a little bit overboard. You had obviously the running down the hallway with the helicopter and the gun drop, and then I know it was added later with Wesker running up the wall and Chris having a fight with him at the end, but like, you get my point. There are those options, and like Steve jumps through the window and it's slow motion because, you know. So there are cutscenes. There's no gameplay involved where it's like over the top action shit, but I could see you doing some kind of weird experiment with it. But I do believe Resident Evil 1 needs to be done again. I do. I think it needs to be done in the way they're doing it now, and it'll be a bit weird because we've had 2, 3, 4, and then all of a sudden you've got Resident Evil 1. It's a little bit weird, isn't it? And are you just going to call it Resident Evil? Are you going to call it Resident Evil something? Because like you've got like 3 Resident Evils then. It gets a bit messy. It doesn't, and maybe that might confuse people, who knows, but I do believe it needs to be done. It needs to be done in the RE2 remake style, for the love of God. But don't do action. Just please don't. Not with Resident Evil 1. It doesn't deserve that. It doesn't. And I love action horror. Just don't do that, Capcom. But I do believe it should happen. Do I think it will happen? No, I don't. I think they've hit a home run with this style of gameplay, and I'm not even sure they'll be considering it anymore. I think they're just gonna maybe do 5. I think 5 might be next, because this gameplay, you literally just pull it, plop it in RE5, add in Sheva, so you've got co-op, do the new level design, and then obviously hopefully they fix the atmosphere and everything. But I genuinely think RE5's next. I don't think they're going to do 1. I hope they do. I really, really hope they do. I want to explore the mansion up close, man. I don't want fixed camera angles showing me like nothing. I can't see all the details. I want to see it with my own eyes. I want to have full camera control and full aiming control, for God's sake. But I don't think it will. I honestly think 5's next, and I hate the fact that it is. But I think, as a betting man, if you want me to bet, RE5's next. I want 1. I think 1 needs to be done. What do you reckon, people? Do you think Resident Evil 1's next, or do you think Resident Evil 5's next? Maybe you think Code Veronica is, even though we've just skipped that once already and clearly isn't a priority. What do you think, people? What do you think the remake is next? Let me know in the comments down below. That's all I got. I'll catch you later.